Who controls all of our money? Never thought about who runs the world economy from behind the scenes? Come with us on an exciting journey into the secret world of money control. Who controls our money, and what factors affect the movement of money and currencies between countries? There's a big question that everyone in the world's financial system needs to answer. Who really owns all of our money? Get ready to learn about the hidden systems and power processes that control the rise and fall of wealth around the world. Are you ready to find out what's going on behind the scenes? From childhood, we're told money is hard to come by. We should study to work our whole life to earn it. How did the money materialize overnight? Creating money, but how? Who pays? The implications and next steps. Government prints money first. The government controls the central bank mint. Coins and paper money are physical money. This money makes up 3 to 8% in many economies. Money controls most people's lives, unfortunately. Nothing else matters or is mentioned. School prepares us for a good job and university to swap hours for money. Why not care where and who gives money? Who manages our money? Many folks today can tell our financial system is broken but can't pinpoint it. Some blame capitalism, others government. England just finished 50 years of war in 1694. The weary English government needed political loans. Scottish financier William Paterson envisaged a private bank that could print government money. World's first modern central bank. The people is ignorant that central banking has greater power than laws, governments, and politicians. Bankers tried to establish a U.S. central bank in the early 20th century after 2 failed efforts. Senator Nelson Aldrich boarded a 6-person private New York train compartment in December 1910. Media were barred from seeing the 6 to avoid questions. They went to Jekyll Island, Georgia. The Fed was created after a 9-day meeting. All this is public. Some profiles mention meetings. New York National City Bank President Frank Vanderlip told the Saturday Evening Post on February 9, 1935, "I was as discreet as any conspirator. We knew discovery was impossible or our time and effort would be wasted. If Congress knew we wrote a banking bill, it would never pass." Nelson Aldrich assembled 6 bankers, treasury officials, and some of the world's richest people. 6 men held 25% of the world's wealth in 1910. The bankers assured Americans that the system would stabilize the economy and remove Wall Street's rule. If they succeeded, a few guys could manufacture money from nothing and lend it to the U.S. government with interest. Why was it secret? Because Americans didn't want a central bank. Back then, people understood central banks better than today. Wherever a central bank went, money followed. Federal Reserve Act. Europe was an ongoing example. The Federal Reserve was originally called the Aldrich Bill, but Congress took notice of Senator Aldrich's name. Bankers dispatched 2 millionaire pals to carry the measure and renamed it the Federal Reserve Act for better cover. Average citizens read bankers' opposing writings and thought if the bankers hate it, it must be good, and unknowingly supported a Trojan horse. A small group controlled American money issuing and creation after the measure was passed on December 23, 1913, when most of Congress was on holiday. Bankers inserted power-limiting clauses but removed them after the bill passed. Petrodollar. The Fed is the U.S. most powerful institution and proud of it. The post-World War II Bretton Woods monetary system backed and exchanged all U.S. dollars for gold, making currencies stable. You could estimate prices year after year because all countries' exchange rates were fixed. Before floating, starting a firm, calculating earnings, and doing business were easy. Unfortunately, President Nixon removed the U.S. currency from the gold standard in 1971 due to a declining dollar, global gold investment, and Vietnam War finance. Dollar convertibility into gold or other reserves should be temporarily limited by Secretary Connolly. Since 1971, the dollar has floated without support, yet world reserves are supported by it. All currencies now rely solely on U.S. government trust. Fiat money. Yes, fiat currency is unbacked money. Thus, fiat, let it be done in Latin, is money as the government claims. The Federal Reserve's money creation dilutes all other nations' currencies because their reserves are secured by the U.S. dollar. Recently, the Federal Reserve has produced trillions of dollars, prompting Russia and China to sell dollar reserves and buy gold. Smart people may have wondered, how can I pay if all currencies are backed by nothing? The entire economic system now relies on faith in currency exchange. Central banks. The Treasury Department is contacted when the government needs more money than taxes. The Treasury gets an IOU or bond from the government and delivers it to the Fed through banks. The Fed writes a government check. Boston Fed quote, "Checks require enough money in your or my account. Federal Reserve checks are written without bank deposits. The Fed writes checks to create money. That would get us arrested for fraud, but the Federal Reserve built the global system. Commercial banks make money. Money creation and distribution. Each time you borrow money to buy a house, car, or TV, Banks produce money out of nothing and charge interest. Former Central Bank of Canada Governor Graham Towers. Every loan builds credit. New deposits. Brand new money. Bank of England Deputy Governor Paul Tucker. Banks extend credit by simply increasing the borrowing customer's current account. A bank creates money by putting digits into a computer to lend. 97% of money is digital. Commercial banks can lend 10 times their reserves through fractional reserve lending. Who legislated this absurd system? The 1913 Federal Reserve System is used worldwide. The deal? Why bother? More loans generate cash. When inflation gets out of control, money loses value. Recently, Argentina, Zimbabwe, and Venezuela have experienced hyperinflation. We all pay for money printing deception with inflation. Easy money today for future taxation. In 1950, a house cost $7,000 and a car $2,000. With this method, prices will always rise. The worth of money changes with its quantity. Gold monitored the money supply and held governments accountable for millennia. Money has been flexible since Nixon halted dollar-gold conversions in 1971. Nixon's decision affected the world since the US dollar is a reserve currency. Money production continues despite politicians' inability to control it, which may cause issues as we'll see later. The 1704 English Promissory Notes Act made $20 notes valid dollars. Digitally, we term this agreement debt. Consider this paper money when I mention debt. Remember how central and commercial banks produce money from nothing? This technique generates debt. The bank records loans as debt, negative money. This method treats debt like money. According to former Fed Governor Mariner Eccles, if there are no debts in our money system, there wouldn't be any money. Our system is termed the debt-based monetary system, since debt always accumulates. Countries and people must borrow more to expand money supply. The debt, money supply, and system would fail if people and governments cease borrowing money and paper clones. The Fed and other central banks manipulate money supply and interest rates. Central banks can manipulate the economy and cause booms and busts with these technologies and human group psychology. To combat the dot-com bubble crisis and stimulate borrowing, Federal Reserve Chairman Alan Greenspan slashed interest rates to 1% in 2000. Mortgages are cheaper with low rates. It was a good deal because 1% hadn't been seen since the 1950s. Greenspan believed he could create money. Corruption was a factor in the 2008 crisis, but the Fed has a bigger long-term impact. Amazingly, Japan's central bank bought the most Japanese equities in 2016. Thus, they control part of companies with money they made from nothing. After several early bank runs, banks convinced lawmakers that they should be permitted to issue more deposits than exist based on debt, which is how governments outsourced digital money production. 97% of the world's money is digitally produced by banks, privatizing it. After several early bank runs, banks convinced lawmakers that they should be permitted to issue more deposits than exist based on debt, which is how governments outsource digital money production. Banks will allow debt notes as money. From here, banks may create and destroy debt and rent money at interest. The modern economy relies on these promises. Money is created by banks using double bookkeeping when lending to customers. The bank puts $500,000 in their account and you owe $500,000 with interest if you buy a $500,000 residence. The house owner can acquire other economic goods with that new loan. Debt is money reframed. The lender sees it as a financial asset, whereas the borrower sees it as debt. Increased debt is needed to grow our economy. The simple answer is that a bank's solo issue isn't someone else's savings or money. They type new money into a computer and make it look like government money you can spend. Banks benefit from additional money because they may charge interest. When you repay the loan, the debt and money go, but the bank keeps the interest. Private central banks. In 1881, James Garfield said, "Whoever controls the volume of money in any country is absolute master of all industry and commerce." And when you realize that the entire system is very easily controlled, one way or another, by a few powerful men at the top, you will not have to be told how. Periods. Franklin argued in his book that the American War of Independence was essentially about money control and issuance in the new colonies. According to Nobel Prize-winning economist Milton Friedman, the Federal Reserve definitely caused the Great Depression by contracting the amount of currency in circulation by 1/3 from 1929 to 1933. Finally, some say central banks aren't awful if they're government-owned. The government should produce its own money for the people and not pay high interest on its debt. Lincoln attempted this in the US. The government should issue and circulate all currency, and following these standards will save taxpayers a lot of interest. Money will help humanity, not rule it. Lincoln issued the greenback government money. Private banks need funds to meet obligations. A $10 note costs 3 cents to create, therefore the government generates 97% profit on currency printing and minting and can cut the am. You may question why governments don't always produce hard currency. If politicians could print money at whim, there would be a major conflict of interest and a temptation to keep printing to fulfill campaign promises or fund wars, which would devalue and destroy the currency. Subscribe now to unlock exclusive insights into the intricate world of monetary control and join the conversation on who truly holds the reins of our global economy.